Hey everybody, what is up? Kevin Iole here. Thank you for joining me. I am really looking forward to chatting with you. We had a false start last time I tried to do this, so I am so happy we got this thing up and running, and I could get a chance to chat with you guys and answer your questions and just basically talk about the fights. But let me fill you in a little bit on what's been going on with me, what I am doing, and then we'll talk about the chat and we'll get to your questions. But I know a lot of you know that I was at Yahoo Sports for a long time, 17 years. I was there, and December 1st, I was laid off by Yahoo, and I started my own site, keviniole.com. And that has been live since January 22nd. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to get a lot better. We have mobile apps coming. You're going to like those. It's going to, I think my site scales really well now as it is, but it's going to get a lot better when the mobile apps come out. So you'll see those, and we'll just get you to download it either from the iOS App Store or from the Google Play Store. And we'll have that going out there. I'm working to really improve my YouTube channel, working with some people that are helping me quite a bit, and I think that's going to look better. Next week is UFC 300, and so I've started kind of working hard on UFC 300 interviews. I had a Max Holloway interview the other day, Renato Moicano today. Tomorrow I have a couple big interviews tomorrow. I have John Anik, the UFC broadcaster. I have former light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill. As well as I have former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt tomorrow. I'm going to do a few slap fighting interviews tomorrow. Then on Friday, I will have Justin Gaethje. Then next week, I will have Alex Pereira, among many others. Bo Nickel I will have on, Kayla Harrison I will have on. So next week with UFC 300, Dana White is calling it the biggest fight card that the UFC has ever put on. I think he's called it the biggest combat sports card he's ever put on. So I'm going to be covering this pretty aggressively, going to have a lot of content. It's going to be both written content and video content. So for my written content, and I will have all my videos there, you can go to keviniole.com, KEVINIOLE.com. And for my video, it's just youtube.com/KevinIole. So that will be really good, and I appreciate that. And if you guys are interested in any of my merchandise, if you go on my site, you can click the little hamburger menu, the three lines up in the upper left, and you'll see it says Kevin Iole merchandise down toward the bottom, or you can just go to keviniole.myshopify.com. And I got a lot of merch on there and a lot of good stuff. So I know some people like my logos. If you want to get that, I am very happy to do it. Anyways, let's get into this. I will answer any of your questions. You got to be a subscriber to ask questions. If you do a super chat, we are going to get you right away, and we appreciate anybody who will do that. But subscriber questions I will get to. But let's go over. I'm going to pull up my poll that I have done. UFC 300, 13 fights. 11 of the fighters are former champions and current or former champions. And I think that's a really fascinating card. And so I did a poll yesterday, and I put all 13 of the fights, and I gave you guys the opportunity to rank the fighters and the fights in the order that you want to see them. And so right now I have a little over 10,000 votes. And this is interesting. I'm going to just read the top five right here. The top five fighters fights: Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. That is for the BMF title. That fight is in first place, and it's kind of running away with it right now. The main event: Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. That is second. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Sarukian is third. Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic is fourth, and Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt is fifth. So that is where that is going. You guys can vote on there if you go to KevinIole.com. I did put the link on social media, but if you go to KevinIole.com, click on Fight Chatter, it'll be right up under Fight Chatter. And I should tell you too, if you go into Fight Chatter, you don't have to just respond to my stories. You can create your own topics, whatever topic you want about combat sports. As long as it's a combat sports topic, you can create your own topic and write whatever you want. And I am cool with anybody's opinion. I don't have any problem whatsoever with what your opinion is, as long as you're nice to everybody else and you back your opinions up with facts. It'll be good. So I see I got a question. Who will I be interviewing next? So next, that will be tomorrow. I've got a busy day tomorrow. So I guess the first one is going to be Jamal Hill, the former light heavyweight champion of the UFC. He is fighting in the main event against Alex Pereira, the current champion. He has said that it's going to be an easy fight. I am kind of shocked by that, right? He's saying that is going to be an easy fight. So that is really going to be a fun one. I don't think it's going to be an easy fight. I think that is going to be a hell of a fight. I'm going to do a story next week. I should say this. I'm going to do a story next week. I'm just laughing because somebody's asking me baseball questions on here now. But I'm going to do a story next week where I go over and make picks on every fight on the card. Some of them I'll have betting plays on. I'm not going to have betting plays on everything, but I'm going to have betting plays on a number of the fights. But I will make a pick who I think is going to win every single fight on the card. And that's one of the fights that I don't really have a good opinion on yet. So I still have to kind of get that thing figured out and see where I'm going with that. But my next interview is going to be with Jamal Hill. That is tomorrow. I've got a couple of the power slap fighters that I'm going to be interviewing after him. And then in the afternoon tomorrow, I am going to have John Anik. John Anik is the UFC play-by-play guy. I'm going to be talking to John at 3:15 Pacific time. And we're just going to go over the card and kind of how we got to where we are, kind of some big storylines and things like that. John is really good, really insightful on MMA. Trying to get Michael Bisping. I should add that Michael Bisping, the UFC Hall of Famer, former middleweight champion, who is now a fantastic broadcaster. I asked Michael if he could come on with me. He's got a crazy schedule. He's going to make every effort to do an interview with me. And then after I do John Anik tomorrow, I have Cody Garbrandt. And then on Friday morning, I have Justin Gaethje. So that is the rest of this week. And I mentioned Illinois Bigfoot. Next week, I'm going to have a lot of the fighters on there. I'm going to probably have all the fighters that speak English. And I'm gonna not do too many translated interviews. Alex Pereira's English is not that great, but he is the champion. He's fighting in the main event, so we are going to have him on with an interpreter. But that is going to be mostly, we're going to get most of the English speakers because I want to get that, make it look easier. Can Holly Holm turn things around against Kayla Harrison? You know what? That is a really interesting question. And I don't know who I like in that fight either. And I'll tell you why, because I think there's two separate issues here. Holly is over 40 years old. She hasn't, especially against the elite fighters, she hasn't really stepped up. That Ronda Rousey win that she had, that's 9 years ago now, a long time ago. And she really hasn't repeated that. And most of her big fights, she has struggled in. So I look at it and I say, Kayla Harrison's a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She was a PFL champion, has great judo. I would favor Kayla Harrison. But, and this is where now it becomes interesting, Kayla Harrison is a very big woman. She fought 170 in judo. I forget the kilos. I'm not going to make the translation, but she did in the Olympics, she basically was fighting at 170 pounds roughly. And now she's cutting to 135. And this is, she has made several test cuts. I did an interview with her when the fight was first announced, and she signed with the UFC. And you can find that on my YouTube channel. Or if you go on to KevinIole.com and search for Kayla Harrison, you'll be able to find that interview. And she told me that she had made some test cuts, and that as a result, she was confident that she would be able to make the weight. And not only make the weight, there's one thing of, hey, I can get the weight off and I can get on the scale and be 136, which is what she has to be, and be eligible to fight the next night. But you have to also make the cut and still have some reserve left. And she is a big woman. So that is a tough call, man. I'll tell you what, can Holly Holm turn things around? That is an extremely, extremely tough call. And I'm certainly not so sure about that. Next question is Max Holloway against Justin Gaethje, fight of the year in the making. If you watched my interview I did on Monday with Max Holloway, I said that right out to him. I think that not only is fight of the night, but I look at that as, like, hey, that's my front runner for fight of the year. I mean, both of these guys, Max Holloway holds almost every striking record in the UFC. And his fight against Calvin Kattar, he set the record for most significant strikes landed in a fight. And it was an enormous number. Gaethje is known as the human highlight. So obviously that is, he is going to be Justin Gaethje's in fight of the night every night. So you put those two guys together, and I have to think that is going to be fight of the year. On my poll that I mentioned earlier, and I said, what is your fight you're looking forward to most? I voted for Gaethje Holloway #1, but I voted for Pereira and Hill #2. I think that fight, that's going to be a slugfest. I don't think that's going to go past 2 rounds. I think one of those two guys is going out. I would love to see that fight go 5 because they both hit hard. They both are good strikers. I think that would be fun if it went a long time, but I don't know that either guy is going to have the chin to be able to last and do that. So that's going to be interesting. Let's see, Zach MMA, welcome. I appreciate your brother being on. Honestly, the fact that she's walking around at like 150 as opposed to the 165 she was walking at before makes me think it's not that big a deal. I think she just lives a little bit less of a fun life. I think Kayla Harrison is really a smart person, and she has good people around her. She trains at American Top Team. Mike Brown, the coach there, Dan Lambert has given those athletes everything. There is a ton of resource for them. So I understand what you are saying, but you're in the heat of competition. Your body does things. You're getting ready for the fight. Mentally, your mind plays tricks on you. I hope that Kayla is able to be her best self, because you know what, this is going to be her chance to show how good she is. The PFL had some good fighters, but they certainly don't have the depth like the UFC had. And so Kayla was able to get through a lot of those fights without really extending herself. If she can come through and do well against somebody like Holly Holm, even though, I'm going to be honest, and I don't mean this, and I hope Holly doesn't take this the wrong way. I think Holly's been a little bit overrated because she had that unbelievable win over Ronda Rousey, but when has she repeated that, right? She lost the title in her next fight, and I think it's incumbent upon Holly herself to step her game up, right? And so, but I think this fight, Zach, for Kayla is going to be a big tell, because we'll find out how good she really is as an MMA fighter. Because, you get in the UFC and you're fighting girls of this or women of this caliber, you're not fighting people who are one-dimensional. They are multi-dimensional, and they can strike with you. And Holly Holm can grapple, she can wrestle. So I think that there's some interesting things going on. Let's see, what else do we have here? Jude, love all the content. Really enjoyed the interviews with Hanato and Max. I appreciate that, Jude. Thank you so much. Means a lot to me. Let's see. I can't believe Kayla can make 135. I didn't think it was possible for her to make that. As I said before, she is very, very smart. She has good people around her and people that care. And not all the fighter gyms are the same, right? They get paid more if you're in big fights and everything. And some gyms, they look at that paycheck and they think, what can happen if you win on a big UFC card? Dan Lambert and the people at ATT, they care about the fighters, and they wouldn't put Kayla into this fight if they didn't think she could make it. That doesn't mean that she's correct, or that they're correct, right? But but they care about her, and I think that they've really done the best that they can make sure. So that is a good one. Let's see. Jude, we got Jude up again. And what is the most intriguing prelim? Off the top of my head, I want to say Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, former champions. I think a fight that I think is going to be really, really good that probably people are sleeping on is Sodiq Yusuff and Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez just been incredible since he's gotten in the UFC, and so I think that that is going to be a fight that don't miss that one. Super Sadiq and Diego Lopez, I think, is going to be a good one there. So this is my favorite question so far. How old am I? Right? Of course, 28. I mean, how old do you think I am? Come on, let's be real here. Anyways, let's see. I see another question. I hope that she can keep these cuts. This is talking about Kayla. Keep these cuts going long enough, frequently enough to be active. 135 needs her bad, and I would hate for her activity to be diminished too much by the weight. I agree with that. I mean, that's a really good point, Zach. And I think that, how often can she come back? I mean, I think when you look right now, everything goes in cycles. And when the UFC added the women right away, bantamweight was with Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate. You really had a strong women's bantamweight division, and I think the bantamweight division has kind of dropped. It's not one of the better divisions in the UFC right now, and so as a result, I think that I agree with what Zach said. The division could use Kayla. They could use star power. They could use somebody who has a big name and has that kind of, that she was an Olympic gold medalist. She's an all-around athlete. So I really, I think it would be good for the division if she was there, because I think if Kayla proves against Holly Holm that she can compete on a regular basis and she can be that elite fighter, that's going to drive competition. And it always does. When you get one dominant champion, it makes everybody else. And I think about it like in golf, when Tiger Woods came around, all of a sudden people started hitting the golf ball farther. Well, was it because of equipment? Was it because of the golf ball? Or was it because they started seeing what Tiger did and started working out and got themselves more physically fit, and they started hitting it further? And I think that, when you have a superstar like a Ronda Rousey, it attracts those kind of people. And I think Kayla Harrison can be that same thing. So it's going to be there. I look like I'm 57 years old. Well, I was 57 years old 7 years ago. So appreciate that. So I'm 64, and I love what I do, and I'm hoping to be doing this for a lot longer. Greetings from Romania. It's 12:16. Holy smokes. Well, we appreciate you joining us in Las Vegas, where it is 2:17 p.m. and 75 degrees. And I'm sitting here in front of a computer with a dog sleeping behind me, talking to you guys instead of out enjoying the weather. But you know what? When there are big fights coming up, nothing better to do than to talk about the big fights. So I am happy to do that. Let's see here. My man, Dennis. You know what, Dennis, I have to tell you, I have been told that I need to interview you, right? So I've heard that you would be a good person for me to interview. So let's talk after the show is over. But he's asking, what were the rumors of other main events that were mentioned for UFC 300? The one that the UFC wanted to put on was Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. And let me explain the problem with that fight, and then we'll get to other ones. Conor signed up to do the Roadhouse movie, and then that movie was just released last week. He had to go on a publicity tour, right? So the issue became, when they were getting down to start making UFC 300, Conor had to be able to be in training on a regular basis. Well, the movie, Amazon needed him traveling the country, traveling the world, promoting the movie, and he had a lot of obligations to do, and he couldn't train, so they really couldn't put him on that card. So that was, Dennis, that was the first one that they had looked at. They had a number of fights for Leon Edwards. The most prominent one that they were looking at for the welterweight title was going to be Islam Makhachev, moving up from 155, where he is the lightweight champion, and they were going to put him up to 170 and have him fight against Leon Edwards for that title. And that was one that they really wanted to do. And I think that Makhachev was willing to take that fight. Then that kind of fell apart because Makhachev got hurt and he couldn't fight until June. And so they kind of were really scrambling up at the last minute. Another one that they wanted to do was John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. John Jones had that surgery, and then he had another injury. I believe his original injury was to his pec, and then he injured an elbow. And so he had that elbow surgery done too. So John is not ready to come back and fight yet. So that was another one that fell through. So they really tried to put this thing together, and they weren't able to get it. Let's see, what do we got here? Early thoughts on Khamzat versus Whitaker. Number one, I love the fight, right? I mean, I think these two guys in particular, I have been touting Khamzat Chimaev ever since the pandemic when he first came into the UFC. And, you know, I think he's lost a little bit from his early days there. And what I mean by that is he was fighting so actively and so often that really helped him. And now, you know, he got COVID and he got sick, and, you know, he had a number of other things. And now he's fighting infrequently. And I think that hurts him. Now, Rob Whitaker, I have always been a big fan of, and I've had him in my pound for pound list for a long time, even though he wasn't a champion. I love Whitaker, and I think he's really, really a good fighter. I lean Whitaker in this fight. I think if I knew Chimaev was healthy and I knew he was, training properly all the time, I would go with Chimaev to win this fight. But I know Rob Whitaker is a constant. I know what I'm going to get out of him. I know he's going to come in shape. I know he's going to be able to, I'm trying to think which word I'm going to say. He's going to perform at or close to his peak. Whatever the best Robert Whitaker is on a given day, that is, what you're going to get out of Robert Whitaker, where I think Chimaev is more up and down. I think Chimaev has more potential, but you saw, like, when he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz last year and he missed the weight by that much, he's not you can't rely on him as much. So, Jude, I think, I would lean toward Robert Whitaker. I think Chimaev is the better overall, more talented fighter. So that's kind of where I would go. So let's see. What else do we got here? Keep the questions coming. I appreciate it. We'll keep going. And if there's any boxing folks out of there, I would appreciate that. What's the deal with you and Dana? You seem to be one of the only ones who ask him hard questions, but he keeps allowing you to the media days. Well, I have known Dana since before he was in the UFC. I live in Las Vegas, and Dana lives in Las Vegas. I've been in Las Vegas for 35 years. And I used to see Dana around town, and he always wanted to be in boxing, and I got to know him that way, right? And that was we've had a relationship for a long time, and I think Dana knows that I'm always going to be fair, and I'll ask the questions that I think that need to be asked. But I'm not trying to play gotcha or, I want to get answers to questions that people want to know, that are newsworthy questions. And he knows that, I'm just doing my job. I think, and I disagree with him on a lot of this. I think he thinks a lot of media people are out to get him, right? So as a result of that, I think, that's why he has that attitude toward them. He knows that I'm not out to get anybody, right? I just want to, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, whether I think you're a good fighter or a bad fighter, I'm not out to get anybody. I just want to report the facts, write the stories. I'm a columnist, so my job is to give my opinion, and I do that. But I just want to make that point that, it becomes I just think a matter of trust. I guess that's the best way I will say that. Joe, I appreciate your brother. That is really nice of you, and shout out to Joe Zapata for that. Thanks, and that nice tip. That really means a lot to me, and thank you, sir, for doing that. Do I think Israel Adesanya will fight Strickland next? Great job. Appreciate you so much, Jersey Joe. It means a lot to me for you to do that, and I'm humbled by it. I think Izzy is going to fight UFC 305. He is going to fight for the title in Perth, Australia against Dricus du Plessis. That is the fight that I expect to see pop up and be announced. I have been in favor of Izzy doing a rematch with Strickland because I felt like that would be a really good fight, for the both of them. Izzy lost. Strickland lost coming off that, lost his championship to du Plessis. I thought, that would give Izzy a chance at revenge. It would give Strickland a chance to kind of get back, and then it would pick a logical contender. But I think the fact that the UFC did that deal you saw with Perth, Australia just recently, and they made that, I think when they did that, then that told you that, hey, they're going to put, a really big show together down there. And I think you're going to see Adesanya fight on that card. George, my friend George, and George is my co-host today. So I have to give George a really big shout out because Georgie Bagels has helped me. Last time I had quote unquote technical difficulties. My go live button was grayed out. So George was my man. He helped me out, and I appreciate that. So we're back up. I'm going to do these chats now. I'm going to try to do them twice a week. What I think I'm going to do in the future, maybe not next week because it's UFC 300 and I am going to be slammed. But most weeks, what I want to do is I'm going to do like a boxing chat one day and an MMA chat the other day. And that way we'll keep the content separate. But having said that, right now, George asked about should the Tszyu Fundora fight have been stopped? And I don't think so, to be honest with you. I talked to my friend Fred Sternberg about this, and he was of the opinion, and Fred, by the way, congratulations, was elected to the International Boxing Hall of Fame, will be inducted in June. In my opinion, the best publicist in boxing history, has done a phenomenal job with people. And I think that Fred deserves a lot of credit for that. He thought that fight should have been stopped. I kind of felt like it was a bad cut, and it definitely affected Tszyu and Tszyu's ability to see. And you saw, I don't know what you guys thought. My opinion when I'm watching that fight live was that Tszyu is on en route to stopping Fundora. He dominated the first round. He dominates the second round, and then there was that elbow. And if you guys did not see it, Fundora was like this. And Tszyu's head comes in and it just hits him at the bottom of the elbow. And it was almost like he headbutted Fundora's elbow. I'm not sure really what was going on. But, it was just crazy, right? I mean, it was really something else. And as a result, it changed the course of the fight. Fundora's confidence really picked up, and you saw Fundora fight the rest of the way with a lot of confidence. But you also saw Tszyu, maybe getting hit more, and he was having trouble seeing, right? So it was difficult for him. But I thought it was fair, and I think time proved, one judge thought he won the fight. It was a good fight. He wasn't dominated over those last 10 rounds. Even though Fundora won the majority of those last 10 rounds, I think a lot of the rounds where you could have, picked one or the other, right? So I didn't think it should have been stopped. I'm glad that they let it go, but very good, very good question. Let's see here. What do I got? My man Dennis, would we ever see UFC versus any other promotion? They did that one time with Pride. They brought Chuck Liddell over to Pride, and he got beat by Rampage Jackson. But I don't think they're never going to do that, because what is the benefit of the UFC, right? Like I'll give an example. Francis Ngannou was built by the UFC, so he was turned into a star by the UFC. Now he signs with the PFL. He's never fought in the PFL. He's boxed a couple of times. He's 0-2 in boxing. Now, Don Davis and Pete Murray, the two head honchos at the PFL, said, hey, we're happy to put on a show and promote John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Yeah, of course you would be happy to do that, right? You're going to take 50% of the money as a promoter, as a co-promoter, for having done nothing, right? For signing Francis to a contract. That's what would happen if you do that, right? UFC built Francis from nothing into a superstar. UFC built Jones from nothing into a superstar, and then all of a sudden, now they are saying, well, we're going to co-promote with the PFL. No, the PFL didn't, deserve that. So I don't think that you're going to see the UFC do that. So I think the UFC will stay in their own lane. They've got the number one promotion in the world. I think it's going to stay separate. If you want to fight in the UFC, you're going to have to be in the UFC. You're not going to be outside and coming in and fighting. So good question, Dennis. I appreciate that. Okay. Great to see you live. Thoughts on MMA Guru? I don't know MMA. I've never met him, so I don't really have thoughts on him, but I know he's successful. I've heard good things about his page and about his site. So I congratulate him and for success, and I hope that he continues to do better, right? And if he has that success with his picks, right, I hope he's playing those bets, right, and making the money out of that, because that's awesome to see somebody do that. So let's see, what else do we have here? I know it's not UFC 300, but what are your thoughts on the Allen Curtis 2 this weekend? I like Brendan Allen in the fight. I think Brendan may even get a submission. He's really been looking good, and so I like Brendan in that fight, Jude. I think it's Chris is a little bit up and down, right? And I think he's going to come into this fight with a point to prove. So, people weren't thrilled with his last fight, and I think he knows that, and he was kind of arguing with people on social media, and that's never the place to do it, right? You want to do it in the octagon, in front of the live crowd, and I think you're going to see Chris fired up. But I like Brendan Allen in that fight, so I am going to pick Brendan to win that one. Why are fighters not more interested in learning marketing and how to self-defend when get asked tough questions? Many times they answer in a way that puts themselves in a difficulty with the UFC. There's 2 points to your question, and let me take the second one first. Hello, world. Many times they answer in a way that puts them in difficulty with the UFC. It really doesn't. Dana has been very clear. He doesn't care what they say, right? Dana is a free speech guy. Say what you want to say, and you can criticize or say what you want, and he's not going to be bothered by that. I think other organizations, heads of organizations, the NBA commissioner, the NFL commissioner, whatever, they don't like that, and they don't want you to do it. But I don't think that's how Dana White is, good or bad. When Sean Strickland was making those racist and homophobic comments at UFC 297, Dana White defended his ability to do that. So I don't think, to answer the second part of your question, I don't think it puts them in a bad way with the UFC. But going to the first part, I think you make a good point here, and it's astute. Not a lot of these fighters are media savvy, and when you look at some of the fighters who are successful, they're when they become stars, it's because they can present themselves to the media in a way that people want to watch them fight. Right? At the end of the day, this is the entertainment business, and you've got to give people a reason to watch you fight. I interviewed Hanato Moicano. That interview is up today. And look at the difference in Moicano. He was a quiet guy that, never talked, nobody really ever heard of. And now all of a sudden, he's been saying all these crazy things. And you got to watch it. If nothing else, watch the first couple of minutes of my interview with him, where I talked to him. In his last fight, he said, my 62-year-old father just had a child yesterday, so I'm going to go home and get Mrs. Moicano pregnant, and I'm going to have another child. And so I talked to him about that, and I asked him the question, what was Mrs. Moicano's reaction to you saying that? But I think, Moicano is an example of somebody, he's making himself bigger because he learned how to speak in the media. He's expressed himself. He's fun. He's making people want to talk to him. The media, wants to talk to people like that. So I think that is something that, they more of them should learn to do. Everybody has a different personality though, and some people like it, some people don't. And I just think it's just one of those things. and the check cleared. So of course, when I say nice things about Fred Sternberg, I can always know I'm going to get a snarky comment in return. So I was waiting for that one, and I was very, very glad to get that one. So let's see here. What else do we have? O'Malley said UFC was not happy to see him with 6x9 rapper, just for the record. Yeah, I don't even know the rapper, so like I'm in a bad spot to answer that question. I don't know why. I mean, there are some people in the UFC, not Dana, right, who may not like things the fighters say and might say, hey, if you want to become big, you might want to think about this. But I think, the fans value authenticity, right? O'Malley's been a huge star ever since he got into the UFC. Part of it is because he's such a fun fighter and he's such a skilled fighter, but he also knows how to promote, and he attaches himself to big stars that are out there. And I just think O'Malley has that way about him. And Sean Strickland too. Like, you look at Sean Strickland, right? Sean Strickland is really a man of the people. Would you not agree? Like, whether you agree with Sean Strickland's political positions or his social positions or any of that other stuff, he speaks bluntly and directly, and he gets people, either people want to see him win because they really, hey, finally somebody's, not sugarcoating things, and they're speaking truth to power, and they're speaking out and saying what I think. And they're and people like that, or they want to see him lose and get knocked out because they can't believe how outrageous he is and what he's saying. But the end result of that, when you do that kind of thing, you're getting more eyeballs on your podcast. Like, who is the biggest draw of all time in boxing? And I think in all combat sports, we can all agree Muhammad Ali, I think, right? For those of you who are too young, who weren't alive when Ali was alive and fighting, I mean, you cannot overstate how big he was. I mean, he was the biggest figure in the world. I think he was literally the most recognizable figure in the world. Now, they didn't have pay-per-view back in those days, but if Ali was on a platform, and if Ali had Twitter, Ali had social media, oh my God, it would have been amazing. Now, Ali did have something that today's fighters don't have. He had regular network TV coverage, and he also had regular newspaper coverage, because the really big cities, LA, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, they had 3 or 4 papers, and then all the other cities had 2 papers, and Ali was in all those papers all the time, right? And he sought out the news. So I feel like that is, Ali is an example of a guy that, just made himself so huge. Mike Tyson, same way, is really huge. But Floyd Mayweather is the biggest, seller of all time. I think Floyd's one of the most popular fighters who ever lived. I don't think he's number one, but he's certainly up there. But Ali and Tyson are, but they were in earlier eras. But I guess the point I'm making using them is just, these are guys that speak out, say, and they use the media to their advantage. And I think that's really, really smart. So anyways, let's see. Absolutely, Ali, without a doubt. Yeah, thank you for that. Ali was just incredible. Ali would have been massive, no doubt about that. What are my thoughts on Jamal Hill's Achilles recovery? I know he said a WNBA player did her recovery at the UFCPI, and that's where he did his. Yeah, Jamal actually moved to Las Vegas. Jude, I'll tell you what to do. I know you know my YouTube channel because you are on it now, but if you go through my list of videos, about 6 weeks ago, I interviewed Jamal Hill, and we discussed his recovery from Achilles, and he is 100% confident in it. And there's about, I want to say a good 5-6 minute segment where we talk about his return from his Achilles injury. And so I think you might want to catch up on that, right? And see that, because he answered that question there, and he can answer it, a lot better than I did. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Oh, this is a follow-up, I guess. It seems a little fast from an outsider's perspective. Yeah, I agree with that. But think about this. Jamal was going to fight at UFC 301, which is in May. And they just moved him up a little bit to put him on the main event of UFC 300. So obviously he didn't take the fight card because he was sitting there saying, oh, I'm going to, um, want to be on UFC 300. He took the fight because he wanted to fight Alex Pereira for the title, and he was the former champion, and he felt he was healthy enough to do it. His doctors felt he was healthy enough to do it. The UFC felt he was healthy enough to do it. So I think, obviously Achilles injuries are tricky. And, in the past, they've taken a really long time. And in some cases, I remember when they were, when Achilles injuries, could injure a career, right? They were career-threatening injuries. Thankfully, I think that's the one good thing about medicine. We're getting athletes back and healthier. And when they, like, you think of the great hockey player Bobby Orr, right? He had all those knee injuries because they were cutting his knee open every time. Now you can do that arthroscopic surgery, and it saves a lot of wear and tear. And surgeries are better and more effective, and guys can come back and be the same version of themselves that they were before. Let's see what we got. My man JD. Floyd being the biggest pay-per-view seller, Conor, if he has a couple more fights, I guess he'd be close to Floyd's record. That one I don't think so, JD, because Floyd had so many more fights. So Floyd had 2 fights over 4 million. He had the fight with McGregor that was 4.4. He had the fight with Pacquiao that was 4.6. Then he had, I'm trying to think how many he had over 2 million. He had the De La Hoya fight that was 2.4 million. He had the Canelo fight that was 2.2 million. And he had a whole string of fights at 1 million. Conor just doesn't have enough time left to fight that. Conor, his big number was 2.4 million against Habib, and then the 4.4 million against Floyd. And he had a couple million buys, but he didn't have the sheer number of fights that Floyd had. Floyd fought on pay-per-view basically exclusively since 2006. And I'm not sure Floyd ever fought on regular, TV after that until he retired. And he did, so I just don't think, JD, that Conor could catch up, just given the fact that, Floyd had so many more, more opportunities. Let's see, what do we got here? Mazuma TV, what's going on? Would love to bring you on my channel soon. Let's chop it up. Sure. I'll do any, interviews. As long as you spell my name right, I'll do it. So just send me a message and, message me on social media somewhere, and I will get you there. Let's see what else we got. Dennis, Usman versus Strickland 2 is rumored. I give Usman so much respect after stepping up and fighting Chimaev. If that fight went 5 rounds, could have been different. Do you think Usman could get a title shot again? I think Usman in the middleweight division is going to have a tough go of it. I really do think that. Dana thinks the world of Usman. Believe me, he does. And if you don't believe that, look at the podcast that Usman and Henry Cejudo did with Dana. They had Dana on their podcast. They're doing a podcast together. I think it's called the Ringside Podcast. I can't remember exactly what it is, but they have a really good podcast, and they had Dana on there. And Dana just, was lavishing both of them with praise, but especially Kamaru. But having said that, I think, the middleweight division right now at the very top, there's a lot of contenders that are ahead of him, and Kamaru's up there in age, right? I don't know that there's going to be enough time for him to get that. So I'm going to say no, that I don't think he gets another title shot again. Let's see. Any idea the buy rate for Amazon Prime? Yeah, they won't know for sure. Probably the earliest we will hear will be tomorrow. But what I understand is going to come in, plus or minus 100, which is better than I thought, to be honest with you. I thought with Keith Thurman that it would be around 100. And I thought when the replacement went in and you had Fundora, even though I thought, and I said this before the fight, if you read my content or listen to my interviews that I did last week, I did say before the fight that I thought Fundora Zoo would be a more entertaining fight than Thurman Zoo. Thurman had the bigger name, the more recognizable name. And so I thought that fight would be one that would do more pay-per-views, right? Even though I thought it would be a better one, I thought Thurman's name power would be there. But it looks like they're going to come in at about 100, so plus or minus 100. I think that's very good for that fight. I did not think that it would do quite as well. So congrats to them for that one. Let's see, thoughts on Kattar versus Sterling. That's another prelim on UFC 300 that stands out. I like Sterling in that one. I think Sterling is vastly underrated. He was really underrated as a bantamweight. Now he's moving up. This is his first fight at featherweight. And I think Aljo has that really all-around game, right? Kattar, I think, is going to have the striking advantage, Aljo the wrestling and the grappling advantage. But I think one thing that's people aren't taking into account, Aljo was huge as a bantamweight, right? And I think he's going to be a fairly good size featherweight, but he's not going to have to make that crazy weight cut. He's not going to deplete himself so much. And I think we're going to see the best of Aljo, right? The only thing that concerns me, Jude, about Aljo in that fight against Calvin Kattar is he got knocked out his last fight. And when you get knocked out, that plays with your head, right? And some guys can overcome it. Sebastian Fundora last week did it, right? Now, he did in the boxing match, give Fundora credit. He took a year off, right? And I think that made a huge difference. He was able to recover or let his body, get back, and recover from that knockout. And I think mentally he showed a lot of toughness in that fight by being able to do what he did. But that's my only concern about Aljo is there any remnants from that KO by O'Malley? If not, then I like O'Malley. I like Sterling to win that fight. So, the whole card kind of stands out. Yeah, it does. Let's see. What else do we have here? Do you think John Jones will stay around to potentially fight Aspinall after the Stipe Miocic fight? I really worry about that. And I think that, this is a scenario, speculation on my part. I even asked Dana this, and he claims he doesn't know. And usually he would say to me off the record, here's what I think. And he said he had no idea. But my sense is that Jones retires after Miocic, and that Miocic is going to retire, win or lose. I think if Jones loses, he might, say, I want a rematch to get that back. But if Jones beats Miocic, which I expect him to do, I think he's done. And I think Stipe probably retires either way. So that's going to now leave Aspinall sitting there having to fight somebody, for the championship. And now who do you put him in with? That's going to be a really fascinating. So I'm just going to pull up while I'm talking here. I'm just going to pull up the UFC heavyweight rankings, because I think the highest ranked guy other than them then would become Sergey Pavlovich, and Aspinall knocked out Pavlovich in a minute, right? So, Cyril Gahn would be in there. So right now you've got Jones is the champion, then you've got interim champion Aspinall's number 1, Gahn, former interim champion, number 2, Pavlovich 3, Miocic 4, and Blades 5. So I think Blades and Aspinall are probably going to fight. So you'll see that, that fight occur. I think Aspinall wins that fight pretty handily, to be honest with you, over Curtis. Aspinall is really fast. He's faster than Francis Ngannou. He hits hard, not as hard as Francis Ngannou, but he hits damn hard. And I think that, I would say Aspinall would end up beating Curtis Blades. So then, that would say to me that, maybe the UFC should have Gahn and Pavlovich fight each other. And then that way you can, have a person ready in the background to fight Aspinall if, under my scenario, which I think is going to happen, both Jones and Miocic retire. So let's see here. Winner of Whitaker Chimaev next for the title. What do you see next for Strickland or Cannonier? I think as I mentioned earlier on this Gray Matter, I believe that the next title shot is going to be Duplessis versus Adesanya at UFC 305 in Perth in August. Whitaker versus Chimaev winner would probably be a good opponent, especially if it's Chimaev. Whitaker has already had a number of cracks at Adesanya. He's lost to both of those guys. And given how many title shots and how many good guys there are up at the top, I think Whitaker's in a little bit of a more difficult place, right? The UFC would give him the shot again if they didn't have any other choices, but they do have other choices. So I think Whitaker, even if he beats Chimaev, that'll help him. but I don't think it's going to get him the next title shot. But if Chimaev wins, I think, yes, Chimaev would then fight the winner of Duplessis Adesanya, and that would be really something to see. And if we got that, what is next for Strickland and Cannonier? I mean, I certainly, they fought once. I would love to see them fight again. Cannonier thought he won that fight. I had that fight for Strickland, but good fight. I could see that fight, being rematched. I feel bad for Sean because it's almost kind of like I thought Sean should have either rematched Adesanya or Duplessis, and now he's kind of sitting there, without any logical fight, to make for him, at this point. If we look at the rankings there, Strickland 1, Adesanya 2, Whitaker 3, Cannonier 4, Vettori 5, Brendan Allen 6, Paulo Costa 7. Do you want to see Strickland against any of those guys? So if Adesanya gets the title shot, Strickland fought in January. He's got to fight. He can't wait, for the Adesanya Duplessis winner. So at that point, now you say, all right, so Whitaker and Chimaev have fights. So that eliminates them. So then that says Cannonier, Vettori, Allen, Costa. That to me, maybe one of those guys would come out. And I think just the fun fight out of that group, Brendan Allen might deserve it if he beats Chris Curtis and gets up into that number 5 spot. But that Costa fight might be a lot of fun, right? Costa against Sean Strickland might be a lot of fun. Dennis asked if I could see Pereira moving up to fight for the heavyweight title if he wins this. I do. He's been asked that question a lot. I got a yes out of him the last time I asked him that, right? Mostly he's been saying, I'm going to listen to my body and everything. The last time, Dennis, that I talked to Alex, he said yes, that would be something that he would be open to. He didn't want to put a time frame on it, but I think, if he goes out there and he beats Jamal Hill, I mean, look at this guy will have done, right? I mean, it's just going to be incredible, what he will have done in coming into the UFC. And I think the only thing left for him is heavyweight, and he's got the frame. He's 6'4", 6'4" and a half. I could easily see him, fighting at like high 230s, low 240s, and being in that Aspinall range. And I think he'd be a really athletic heavyweight at that point. So I like that, right? So I think that's a very fun fight. Let's see. Jamal Hill's talked about fighting in heavyweight. Regardless, the winner would either be a big fight and add another heavyweight contender. I like the fact, if you guys look, what we're getting out of the heavyweight division in the UFC, like MMA heavyweights, there haven't been really, there's here and there. Cain Velasquez was great years ago. Fedor was great, but there hasn't always been that, Josh Barnett. I don't want to, Josh Barnett was always great. Of course, Randy Couture, one of the greats of all time, although I think more of Randy as a light heavyweight, but, certainly he had multiple stints as the heavyweight champion. But I think, by and large, you haven't had the depth in the heavyweight division that you have, that you have had in other divisions. And, let's just look at the UFC's heavyweight division right now. John Jones, Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Stipe Miocic, Curtis Blades, Alexander Volkov, Yayotin Almeida, Marcin Tybura, Sergey Spivak, and Tai Tuivasa. I think you can probably go all the way down to Tybura, and, you say, boy, these are fun, good depth heavyweights, right? I think Ty, as much as I like Ty and he's a big slugger, he's getting tagged a lot and he's getting taken down, and when he gets taken down, he's in big trouble. And I think there's some guys coming up. Like, I think Carl Williams is a guy. I like him. He's early in his UFC career, and he has to develop. But you see that, guys, they're athletic. They have a couple of good traits, and then they develop the rest of their games. But now we're seeing a lot of really good heavyweights. And so I think that the heavyweight division is going to be a lot of fun to watch in the next little while. Is there any other potential big fights getting added to the Saudi fight card? I don't know of any specifically that will be added, but I have to think yes. The answer to that is going to be yes. The Saudis are going to want a big card. The UFC knows that's a big market. There's been a lot of stuff going on over there that, I think it's already a really solid makings of a show. They have, I think, 6 fights made or 7 fights made. So they have, that's about half the card. So they have a ways to go in putting that together. But, I do think there's going to be at least one, really good fight, added to that card. So let's see. Have you noticed that Ryan Garcia has been very quiet? You know what, George? I don't think he has been all that quiet, but, he should be quiet. Look, he is fighting one of the best fighters in the world in Devin Haney, and Haney is fighting at the absolute right weight class now, right? He's at 140. I think, we're seeing Devin Haney at his peak, and I think Ryan Garcia at his best is going to struggle with Devin Haney, and then having him do all the, the crazy stuff that he's been doing. I don't know if any of you guys saw Garcia last week said he was going to offer women free boob jobs and free butt lifts. How can this guy be seriously getting ready for a fight with some of the shit that he's doing, right? I just don't understand it. And I think that, that Ryan really needs to focus on the fight. I still don't think that he is going to fight that fight. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see Arnold Barboza fighting Devin Haney. I could be wrong on that, but I just get the sense that, the New York commissioner, somebody is going to pull him from the fight. So, I'm not going to go to the show because I'm in a situation. I'm working for myself. I'm paying for these trips, not Yahoo. And I don't want to go there if it's not Ryan Garcia. If you guaranteed me today, if, somebody could come down from above and stand in front of me and say, Kevin, Ryan Garcia is going to make it to the fight and he will be there when the first bell rings and there will be a fight between him and Devin Haney, I would make my reservation for Brooklyn today. I would be at that fight because I think it's an important fight in the division and I want to cover that. But I just don't think that's going to happen. And I think even we get to fight week and Ryan Garcia gets pulled from the fight, and then I'm kind of like I'm host. And so I'm going to take my chances and stay at home and cover that fight off of payperview.com. And I will not risk spending a lot of money to fly to New York and then not have that happen. Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you for the compliment, and I'm happy to do it. And please, for people who haven't seen my website where my stories and whatnot are, keviniole.com. Everything is there. It's categorized really well, I think. So appreciate you guys checking that out. And if you haven't voted in my poll, please do vote in my poll. Let's see. Thoughts on Bo Nickal? I think Bo Nickal has a chance to be one of the elite middleweights in the UFC. Whenever you have the kind of wrestling that he has, and he got injured, so he wasn't able to compete in the Olympics. But I think that it's fair to say Bo Nickal has Olympic medal winner caliber wrestling. That's how good his wrestling is. And Bo is a phenomenal athlete, and his striking is already, it's still on the lower end. It's not going to be ranked up there with Max Holloway or whoever you want to say has the best striking in the UFC, but it's getting better. And I think, that his striking will always look better than it really is because he has that threat of wrestling and he can take any fighter in the world down. And given that, I think this kid really has some some talent and can do something. We're getting close to an hour. I'll keep going if there's more questions, but if not, we'll wrap this up. June Sports said, great work. I appreciate that, June. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I looked on the website and I wasn't able to find the UFC 300 polls. Hey, Georgia, if you can find my poll, it's if you click on Fight Chatter on my website, it's the first one down right there. But just click on Fight Chatter up in the menu bar. If you don't see Fight Chatter, if you're on mobile, on your phone, in this little thing in the left-hand corner, up here, just click those 3 lines, and that'll bring up another menu like that, and scroll down to Fight Chatter, and the poll is right there, and you can do it. Also, I put it on social media, so it's on my Twitter. Dana actually shared it yesterday on his Instagram story. He liked the poll, so he shared it, and I think that might be a reason why I got a few more votes than normal on my poll, because Dana shared that for me. So I appreciate him pulling that off. By the way, if you guys have suggestions for polls you want me to do, let me know. If you have suggestions for people you want me to interview or ideas for stories you want me to write, let me know. And I am all ears, and I want to do what you guys want. I want to write what I want to write what you want to read, and I want to interview and talk about things that you're interested in hearing about. So if you let me if you let me know what you want, I am happy to do it. And I want to just say one other thing. Social media sometimes is not a really nice place, and a lot of us know that. And sometimes people say things that, are difficult to take sometimes. And I want to say, go bleep yourself, blah, 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 blah. And I don't care if anybody differs with my opinion. I don't care if, you think you know more about MMA or boxing or life in general than I do, right? I just like everybody to have decorum and be nice and whatnot. And if you disagree with me, tell me why you disagree with me, and don't call me a bleeping idiot. And as long as you treat me with respect, I will always treat you with respect, and I'll answer your questions, and I'll do the best I can to help you in whatever it is we're talking about. And I think we can have a great community. And that's one of the things I mentioned. Again, I said before, you can create your own topics on my website, and you can start a forum yourself under Fight Chatter by clicking and creating. You have to register, and I want people to know this. My site is free, free to use. You don't have to pay a monthly subscription or anything. It's ad supported. I make you register just to prevent spam. So if I get somebody spamming my comments, I know who they are, because only people who are registered can comment, and I can eliminate that very easily. And I don't do anything else with those email addresses. So that is the only reason why. And if you put a fake email address in too, that's okay, because if you start spamming me, I just delete your account, and then you can't do it. So I just want you guys to know that, right? But I want to have a great community, and I want to have an active where you guys are talking back and forth, and also I'll get involved in that. So we still got a few more questions going here, so I'll throw them up and see what we got. I should do it live more often. I plan to. Thank you very much. What do you see the problem is with UFC not giving Bilal the title shot? I think twofold. Number one, I think they didn't like his performance in the first fight against Leon Edwards. I think that had a part to do with it. And I think for UFC 300, they wanted what they really thought were kick-ass fights, right? And I don't think that they felt like that would have been a kick-ass fight. And I think that's really the reason. I don't say that to insult Bilal. Bilal is a wrestler who uses his ability to wrestle in his favor. So he's not he's not the problem in that situation, but it's just the style that he has. So I think that's why they didn't want to get that. If it was like UFC 299 or UFC 301, I think they would have done it. But at UFC 300, I think they really wanted to, give themselves the best chance to have, fight after fight after fight be kind of kick-ass, right? So I think that's what was going on. Let's see what else. MMA can be a savage fan base, but the real ones appreciate you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I appreciate that. He looked just like my good friend Rich. Poor Rich. I'm sorry to hear that, David. My sympathies to Rich, but thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's see, Jude. So I think we're done. I'll give it a couple more seconds if anybody wants to, especially if you got a boxing question. Let's see, it's 3:03. I'll maybe hang in here and shoot the bull till like say 3:05. And if we got no more questions, we'll wrap this up. It's been a lot of fun. There will be a replay. So for everybody who wants to see the replay, if you didn't catch the whole thing, the replay will be available so you can watch that. We appreciate you tremendously. And let's see, what do I got going on? As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a bunch of interviews this week. What do you guys think? So let me ask you your question. I'll get you to put your answers in the comments. I won't put these on the screen. So I'm going to be covering UFC 300 next Saturday. So on Friday night, April 12th, a week from this coming Friday, there's two events. There is the Power Slap 7 event at Apex. And then there is the PFL week 2. I think Phil Davis is in the main event of that. I have not, frankly, and you can see it on my YouTube channel, I haven't gotten really good traffic on my PFL stuff, right? UFC stuff is up here, and I haven't been able to match that with my PFL stuff. I'm going to continue to cover PFL and try to build that audience, PFL and Bellator, and try to build that audience and get it up bigger. But right now, I'm not getting much traffic on that, which is telling me that the public isn't that interested, or maybe at least the people who know about me and follow me. The Power Slap, I get a lot of traffic on, right? I had a view. One of my videos is on Instagram, has 1,000,007 views. So what do you guys think? Do you think I should, which one would you rather see me cover? Do I think Ryan's behavior as of late is helping or hurting the Haney fight? I think tremendously hurting the fight, tremendously. If you go onto the Barclays Center, like you want to buy tickets, look at the ticket map. I mean, number one, the tickets are way overpriced, way overpriced. I mean, they were nuts with these ticket prices, what they're doing. But I think it's hurting, right? People don't want, I mean, I don't think people think Ryan is serious about fighting. And I think that is hurting him. If this is a joke and he is doing this to try to, somehow make people think it's funny and bring attention to the fight, I think he's sadly mistaken. I mean, there's hardly any tickets sold at that event right now. I have been in the Barclays Center numerous times, and if any of you guys have been there, you know how massive and cavernous that place is. A lot of space in the Barclays Center, and there's going to be a lot of empty seats in there. So I think, good question, but I think that is a massive one. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I think we got to the end of the line there. Appreciate everybody joining me. And I also want to give a shout out to all my supporters who donated today. And then more than anything else, my friend George Zapata, who is, you check his podcast out. It's sponsored by Ringside. He's been doing a great podcast, getting a lot of good guests on. Appreciate having him. He helped me through this, helped me get some of these questions up here. So George, I appreciate you. I owe you, my friend. And if you're in Berwick, PA, Georgie Bagels, baby. So you can get some bagels from George. We will see y'all. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Enjoy the fights.